Welcome traders, my name is Adam, and let's have a quick look at what's going on with this economic calendar for the week ahead, right? So obviously there's a lot of news about the US at the moment, and we've just come through the Germany elections where it appears that democracy prevailed and the far right sort of came in a reduced and not part of the new coalition government, so that's a good sign considering the times that we live in. So now let's just have a look here. So there's a lot of just pretty much, it's all about the US this week. I am curious to see if there's going to be any changes to the US numbers, consumer confidence, for example, home sales. Curious to see what that happens with jobless claims, considering all of the cuts that are being made. I'm not sure if we'll see the impact of that just yet. And prior to that, I would think that a lot of the fundamentals are still good. So the numbers could still turn out to be relatively strong. But that being said, let's go to the charts and let's see what the price action is telling us. Let's start off here with the VIX. So the VIX starting to rise a little bit here, but still within kind of, I would say, normal norms, or at least certainly going all the way back to 2023. We're still within that area. So for me, it's not really going to get my attention until we start to see it breaching the sort of 30 level. So for now, just seeing a little bit of a rise there, but still within norms. Now, looking at the dollar index, so we have a downtrend here on the weekly. We have a lower high, lower low. We are now at the top of this range. So often if we get a break out of a range, we would potentially come back to test that level of resistance as support. So we could see a potential change of direction here. But in addition to that, though, I noticed that we have this indecision candle. We had a nice solid breakout. We didn't really run that far away. We had an indecision candle. Now we've got this very strong bearish candle. So far, we've got just under a week left for the month. And so this could also ultimately turn out to be a failed breakout. It's usually within 2 or 3 candles that we come back into range if it's a failed breakout. So I'm not really going to jump to conclusions just yet this week. For now, I'm leaning towards the dollar weakening, continuing to weaken, but there is still very much this level in price action, in the range, and therefore could still find some support. Could move down, could finish strong by the end of the week. And so I would think that by this time next week, it's going to be much clearer as to whether we're going to get that continued weakening dollar over the coming months, as opposed to just potentially this week. Now, having a look at euro dollar. Euro dollar continues to attempt to break up through this 1.05 level. So let me just put that in. Let me just mark that in. It's got this level. It's just battling with that for resistance at the moment. In every other respect, it looks pretty good. It just cannot quite get over the line there. And that's obviously what's happening with that US dollar as well. So this week, again, I would have expected, if we do have a breakout here, I would expect that to reflect itself in the weakening dollar. If we have a look at GBP, USD, that has actually managed to continue its trend to the upside. It is starting to slow down a little bit here as well. So we're getting smaller candles, more wicks on top. And so definitely there is this fork in the road with that dollar trying to decide what it's going to do. When you look at it here from a monthly perspective, though, it actually appears as though it's relatively bullish and we could see more upside there. So we're getting some sort of slightly conflicting signals. Again, looking here at dollar yen. Dollar yen is now below 150, which is a really nice place for Bank of Japan. This is the kind of thing they're looking for. So they're going to be very happy to try and keep it here. You can see it's had a really nice move last week, but it is testing support now. So short term, I'm really looking to see if this will continue to come back up, potentially test that for resistance or back into the moving averages and then potentially break down through the support. Again, that momentum is nice and bearish on the MACD, and if we do break through here, that would potentially reflect itself in that weaker US dollar. So all of these are sitting at sort of key levels here, and depending on how they behave this week, that would give us clarity on which way the dollar is going to go in the coming months. Again here, dollar Swissy having broken the low of last month's candle, implying that there's still potential downside, and it also being range bound would also imply that we could see potential further downside on dollar Swissy. Dollar CAD consolidating at the moment after breaking through a level of support, which it's been holding for a while. It's got a very strong bearish engulfing candle. So ordinarily in situations like this, I would also expect further downside, at least back down towards that 1.38 level. So far looking at quite a few of the majors, there is a very real possibility that that dollar will not potentially win this week, and let's see how it plays out. So here again, looking at gold, just really battling here with this. Let's put that level in there, battling quite a bit with the 2940, 2950 area. That monthly looking not so bad. Nice consolidation, breakouts, not too overextended. Could still see it potentially reaching 3,000, but that weekly starting to slow down a little bit. Again, not really seeing much divergence, a little bit of sort of flatter on the MACD. Otherwise, in every other respect, although this is a very historically big move, there just don't appear to be any signs of weakness from a technical perspective. So for gold, I'll be monitoring it. Sorry, to go back to that, I'll be monitoring these lows here if we do end up getting a bit of a pullback on this one. Let's have a look at crude oil. So crude oil looking quite weak at the moment, testing a level of support. testing a level of support, and also within this range as well, you can see how last month's candle showed quite a bit of weakness. We're pulling back down here. So shorter term, I'm expecting this to potentially hit back down towards these lows of support. And you can see the weekly candles are also continuing to look relatively weak there. Let's look at the global markets. Okay, so Friday was a relatively big day to the downside. Not historical, just a relatively big day. It's certainly not as big as the one we had sort of in December. So at this point, there's certainly increasing pressure on the certainly on the S&P. For now, if we do break the low of last week, I would not be surprised to see us hit down to test this level of support. I'm not going to buy into all the doom and gloom just yet. I need to see the market start to display what it's going to do. Might very well just early part of this week come up to test this level of support to see if it could get back above the line. And if it fails to do that, then I would expect it to start to accelerate its moves to the downside. Here, the weekly as well, excuse me, also still maintaining its bullishness, still continuing to produce a series of high lows back into that level, stumbling a little bit there on the monthly, but this is ultimately a consolidation, guys. This, in isolation, this could ultimately lead to a continuation to the upside after a couple of months and then just keep moving higher. So really want to see how it manages to hold above the off this level of support. But if we find resistance, I would not then be surprised to see it obviously come down to test these levels of support further down. NASDAQ, again, almost recovering this time, still above that 50-period moving average. Over here, still looking relatively strong, just failing to break up. So not enough buyers above that level, but but of course, still plenty of buyers underneath here. So that is the battle that is currently going on. Russell 2000 as well, quite a bit of a knock. It's relatively sensitive at this time. You can see really the monthly gives you quite a bit of perspective here. This is not looking super strong at the moment, and it's coming exactly similar to the dollar index is coming sort of approaching the top of the range that it was in for quite a while, going all the way back to 2022, and it may then find support there, but it is looking quite weak at the moment. Could find itself back in that range. Right, so the FTSE here also showing a downtrend on the daily, lower highs, lower lows, and it's really when you look at it on the weekly that it's giving a little bit more clarity. They're battling with that 8.7 level, and certainly wouldn't be surprised to see it pull back down towards moving averages, but overall, still feeling that this trend is relatively decent. I'm curious to see how the monthly ultimately turns out if we break back below this, and that turns out to be a fail breakup because we do have that continued bearish divergence. So overall, in many ways, shorter term, it looks more healthy. Longer term, it is battling a little bit over there. And I want to see how that plays out. If we go across to the DAX, on the other hand, is completely different. Here, we've just got this beautiful MACD momentum. Price action here looks really good. Wouldn't surprise me at all to see if we attempt to take another move up towards that 23,000. But I am observing here that the weekly is sort of quite overextended compared to the last time it was sort of this overextended. In fact, not even as bad. It was 2024. And eventually we did get a bit of a pullback towards the moving averages. We've now produced this bearish rejection candle. And so break of the low, this would then signal to me that this intent to head down towards, say, 21,500, 21,000, and then looking for a potential, just letting off some of that buying pressure, that monthly also looking relatively healthy. So all the MACDs on all of these and all the trend structure and all the price action is looking incredibly healthy. The implication being that any kind of a pullback we would see here would simply be a retracement as opposed to a change of trend. All right, so it looks as though even as we speak, it's trying to push higher. We'll see if it does manage to push higher, if it manages to succeed doing that, or if ultimately by the end of the week, we get a follow through and a break of the low here, and then we start to retrace down towards moving averages on the weekly. Bitcoin still battling with that $100,000 level. Lots of buyers underneath here. You can see all the wicks here propping it up, but just not enough over the line to keep it going back up. And effectively, it's still consolidating from a monthly perspective. It's just hovering around here. It might ultimately just stay where it is until, for a few months, again, similar to the indices, and then just continue up. But I think it would be better served with a break below support. And I think if we get another big move to the downside in the global markets this week, we'll get a similar effect where we might get a break through this level of support. And then I would expect to see it head down towards 80,000 and back down towards these highs here. Ethereum also continues to just kind of hover within the lows here. This not looking particularly strong. So Ethereum definitely appears to have a little bit more downside potential there. All right, let's look at the Mag 7. So here, Apple from a monthly perspective looking great. There's a breakout, a pullback, nice bullish sort of wick over there. Then we've got a nice follow through here. This not looking overextended. So that looks pretty good over there. I am a little bit concerned about the weekly chart here. We have clear bearish divergence. We've got lower highs here, high lows there. So I wouldn't be surprised to see if we do get a bit more consolidation here. Just adding a little bit here, a little bit of wick exhaustion here. Any kind of a pullback here could potentially represent some buying opportunities, but I'm not really loving Apple at the moment. Still, it's not the worst. Microsoft coming under a lot of pressure at the moment here. Big consolidation here, and usually if this was a well-performing, historically well-performing stock such as this one, I would expect it ultimately to, after a consolidation period like this, to break out to the upside. But this is not looking great at the moment. Wouldn't be surprised if we do breakthrough support, we drop down to these levels. So for now, I'm sort of cautiously optimistic on the markets, and so we'll take shorter-term moves to the downside first as an expectation. When we can have a look here at Amazon, so Amazon monthly now starting to show signs of a pullback down towards these moving averages, which is good. We've got a clear downtrend on the daily. We're starting to break below these lows here, so that puts us in not just weekly territory because we're starting to break through those lows. Now looking more and more like we could see a move down towards these moving averages. All right, this level of support, we'll see if it gets back up above it this week, but I'm not really expecting that too much. And this monthly trend looks really good. So this would be a very nice, if we could get a nice pullback down to touch 200, then potentially set up for a continuation. Google as well, you can see big moves to the downside right now, back down towards moving averages. Overall, the trend here not looking that bad at all. Again, lots of signs of exhaustion here and an attempt to break higher, then sort of dropping down. Here's where we get a bit of that sort of bearish divergence a bit. And usually in situations like this, we would get a consolidation, potentially over a change of trend, but we're going to have to see how that plays out. So the daily looks good over this. The monthly looks really good. So initially, at least, plan A on mine is to expect this to pull back into the moving averages and see this as a monthly correction for now. Meta also starting a bit of that weekly retracement. Doesn't really have that far to go to reach some form of sort of equilibrium, letting some of that buying pressure off here. These wicks over here continuing here. I mean, a pullback down towards 600, which is in this area, even for a weekly, would be able to let off quite a bit of that buying pressure, and we'll see how it is when it gets there. overall, this trend looks nice and healthy. Overall, these look good, guys. To me, these appear to be more weekly retracements at this time. We are still in a bull market. All right. And I know we don't do chicken little here. We don't start screaming about how the sky is falling at this time. Certainly not with regards to the market. We treat everything as a correction first. So innocent until proven guilty. Right, let's have a look at NVIDIA. So NVIDIA, I had a little bit of a concern before where I spoke about the monthly, where we had this very strong bearish engulfing candle. And usually in situations like this, what would happen is after a long attempt to break through a level, that would be seen as almost a capitulation. And therefore, normally what would happen after that would be a bigger red candle with a bigger move down towards these levels. In this case, what happened was the market immediately just recovered. So what that tells me, lots of buyers underneath here, just not enough here to keep it going over the line. But that's unusual. That's not the type of thing that would normally happen. And so it's interesting to see it stumbling again with this area. So we could ultimately see it potentially start to finish lower. If that's going to be the case, another sign of exhaustion here would give us clues as to what's going to happen next month. All right, Tesla, letting off a lot of that buying pressure. Okay, so coming back down, I was looking at this coming back into the 310, 300 area, at least as a minimum. Looks very much as though it is looking to do that. The question will be, and it's too soon to tell, I'm afraid, is whether it ultimately finds support here and resumes the trend to the upside. What I would be surprised is I don't expect Tesla to outperform any of the other companies. So unless the markets, the global markets, the indices, and all of these Mag 7 appear to be recovering, I wouldn't be expecting Tesla to be able to recover on its own. I think it benefits from the general bullishness in the market or not. And obviously, I'm very aware of all the brand issues and Elon Musk and the Nazi salutes and all those various things. But I'm keeping that out for the purposes of just analyzing the technicals at this time. Really, from a technical perspective, this is really just a pullback at this point in time. We'll see how it deals when it lands on that 300 level, how it's going to respond to that. The MACD is nice and healthy. It's struggling with that 400 level there, but the pullback here appears so far as within range. You can see the daily coming back up. One thing I would observe is that price didn't even come back up to this level of support to test it. It couldn't actually even get that far back up. So it's a lot weaker than we expect. This area now offering resistance. And so it makes sense that we would see this potentially come back down to test this blue area. The top of this would be what I would have expected as a minimum pullback requirement. The bottom area of the box being what I would have expected as a slightly maximum if it was going to be a monthly correction. What's interesting though is that so far Tesla and just one or two of the others are doing bigger pullbacks. They're doing monthly corrections already, while some of the others are still only doing weekly corrections. Anyway, so for now, I do expect this to potentially at least come back down to test the low here again. We'll see if we can find support at 310. Otherwise, if the rest of the markets continue to take that pressure, it makes sense that Tesla would continue to fall further as well. There we go, ladies and gents. Listen, let's trade cautiously and sensibly. The markets might very well just be letting off buying pressure and recover by the end of this week or next. We'll see. We really do need to see how they ultimately close. With that dollar, I'm looking to see how that dollar deals with the fork in the road, whether it is going to bounce off the top of the range, whether it's going to bounce off the top of the range and start to strengthen again, or if we're going to see it come back into the range. And if it comes back into the range, it makes sense that we will see it continue to weaken down towards the bottom. All right, guys, keeping all that in mind, have a great week, and we will see you soon. Thank you.